Blue Origin is making history with its upcoming mission, sending an all-female crew of 6 passengers to the edge of space. Set for launch on Monday, April 14, 2025, this highly anticipated suborbital space tourism mission will carry a star-studded crew, including pop superstar Katy Perry and renowned journalist Gayle King. The New Shepard vehicle will take the passengers on a brief but exhilarating journey, lasting approximately 10 minutes from launch to landing. During this short but transformative experience, the crew will travel more than 100 kilometers, 62 miles, above Earth's surface, crossing the internationally recognized Kármán line, the boundary that officially marks the beginning of space. Once there, they'll experience a few precious minutes of weightlessness, while taking in breathtaking views of our planet against the darkness of space before their descent back to Earth. As Blue Origin's capsule rises through the atmosphere, an important question emerges. At what point will Perry, King, and their fellow passengers officially reach space? The most well-known and widely accepted boundary is the Kármán line, positioned at 100 kilometers, 62 miles, above sea level. Blue Origin's New Shepard vehicle is specifically designed to cross this threshold, a fact the company proudly emphasizes in its marketing materials. The Kármán line isn't merely an arbitrary marker. It represents a physical transition point where the atmosphere becomes so thin that traditional aeronautics no longer apply. At this altitude, a vehicle would need to travel at orbital velocity just to maintain altitude using aerodynamic lift. The Fédération Aéronautique Internationale, FAI, the World Air Sport's governing body, has recognized this 100-kilometer boundary since the 1960s as the official edge of space for record-keeping purposes. For the all-female crew aboard Blue Origin's capsule, crossing this line means they will officially enter space, even if only briefly. The emphasis on crossing the Kármán line highlights a subtle but significant rivalry in the space tourism industry. While Blue Origin's New Shepard vehicle routinely exceeds the 100-kilometer mark, its main competitor, Virgin Galactic, typically reaches around 88.5 kilometers, 55 miles, falling short of the Kármán line, but still passing the 81-kilometer, 50-mile threshold that the United States government has long used to define space. This discrepancy has fueled a competitive narrative between the companies, with Blue Origin once suggesting that its flights offer a more legitimate path to earning astronaut status. In a 2021 social media post, the company pointedly noted that none of our astronauts have an asterisk next to their name, a thinly veiled criticism of Virgin Galactic's altitude achievements. Despite these marketing distinctions, both companies ultimately offer passengers the key experiences that define space tourism. Seeing the curvature of Earth against the blackness of space and floating in microgravity. For passengers like Katy Perry and Gayle King, these experiences, rather than the precise altitude, will likely create the most lasting memories. The varying definitions of where space begins stem from legitimate scientific considerations rather than mere marketing disputes. Theodor von Kármán, the Hungarian-American engineer and physicist who co-founded NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, was among the first to attempt a rigorous definition of the boundary between aeronautics and astronautics in the 1950s. His calculations, however, were necessarily inexact due to the dynamic nature of Earth's atmosphere, which fluctuates in density. Modern research suggests the functional Kármán line could vary between 84 kilometers, 52 miles, and 100 kilometers, 62 miles, depending on atmospheric conditions. Other researchers, like Spence Wise of Redwire Space, suggest that a more accurate boundary might be closer to 88 kilometers, 55 miles, based on observations of how vehicles returning from space transition from orbital mechanics to atmospheric flight dynamics. This altitude represents where objects stop acting like they're mostly drifting in space, and they start just falling out of the sky, as Wise describes it. The complexity of defining this boundary highlights that the transition from Earth to space is not a sharp line, but rather a gradual process where our atmosphere thins out over thousands of miles. When Katy Perry, Gayle King, and their fellow passengers experience weightlessness at the apex of their journey, they'll join an elite group of people who have left Earth's immediate bounds. But does this brief suborbital flight truly make them astronauts? The answer depends on whom you ask. The Federal Aviation Administration previously awarded commercial astronaut wings to private sector adventurers who reached above 81 kilometers, 50 miles, though the agency largely discontinued this program in 2021 in favor of simply listing participants on its website. Former NASA astronaut Terry Virts has a generous perspective, stating, "If you're strapping your butt to a rocket, I think that's worth something." He compares the distinction to aviation, noting, "When I was an F-16 pilot, I didn't feel jealous about Cessna pilots being called pilots." The weightlessness these passengers will experience has little to do with their altitude, but rather results from the physics of their flight path. The energy built up during ascent is eventually canceled out by Earth's gravity, creating the floating sensation we associate with space travel. Unlike astronauts on the International Space Station, who remain weightless for months while orbiting Earth at much higher speeds, Blue Origin's passengers will experience this sensation for only a few minutes. Nevertheless, as they gaze at Earth from beyond its atmosphere, they'll gain a perspective shared by fewer than 700 humans in all of history, a view that many astronauts describe as life-changing, regardless of the mission duration.